Yo, I think we're live.
Cool.
You ready?
I'm ready. You ready?
Yep. I'm ready.
Double check. Hey,
Hey,
how's it going?
hey, everyone. Hey, nice to see you. I'm sitting on a short chair. Maybe I'll stand up. I wanted to sit down.
Nice. Hey, Ralph. Good to see you. Big Cash.
Yep, they're ready.
Awesome. Cool.
Cool. All right. So just for a little housekeeping, right? So I'm Trovarsi. uh,
I'm
SURCO.
SURCO.
We decided to kind of do a thing and stream to like both of our channels and talk about improvisation, something that SURCO talks and does a lot of. I do as well, but I was very interested in his approach on the Syntakt and using the OXI sequencer because we both use the OXI sequencer. And so we thought this would be kind of a fun thing to do together. So yeah, SURCO, he's going to basically take me through his process and I'm going to give it a shot live and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do is I'll do a quick little jam so that we can so I can show you a little bit about what we're gonna talk about, specifically focusing on the Oxy at first
Cool.
and how I'm using like starting from a blank sequencer. So you'll notice when I go to the other view that the sequencer is totally blank. And then I'll just have some drums that I'm using that are already set, and then I'll be improvising with other stuff using this Syntakt as a sound source, but using the Oxy to improvise. And then after we do that, we'll switch back, and then I'll walk you through what I'm doing so you can do it on your setup live. And we'll talk a little bit about how to use randomization in the Syntakt as a kind of creative sound design thing for coming up with cool sounds to use in a live show or to use in a production or however you want to use them. So,
Cool. All
yeah.
right.
And for everybody to know, this is the first time we've used this setup. So we spent all day yesterday trying to make this work, and I think it works. So let us know if there's anything that sounds weird or compressed or some weird delay or we're breaking up because we're clipping or let us know, please, in the chat because
Please.
we think it sounds okay, but it's the first time we've done it. So you never know.
Yeah.
Might sound
Yeah. So
awful.
definitely. Maybe do like before you get too deep, you want to play like a quick 8 bars and see if
Yeah.
it doesn't sound compressed or if we got to turn off the cancellation.
Just let us know how that sounds in the background.
Sounds okay from my end. I don't see anyone in the chat yet making any comments.
Going, it sounds horrible. What are you
Right.
doing?
Here, let me I'll play mine too, just to
Nice.
Hey, Top. Does it sound okay? It doesn't sound like in a over weird compressed tin canny sound that sometimes live stream can sound.
Hey, Alex. If Alex says it sounds good, that means it sounds good.
Awesome. And Ralph too.
Awesome.
Top. All right. Cool. All right. So I'll let you take it from here to get us started. And
Awesome.
if you have questions, drop them in the chat. I'll make sure to interrupt him and get your questions answered.
Yeah, and that's something. This whole thing is about kind of question and answer too. We just thought it would be more interesting if it was two of us talking through it. But this isn't just for us. This is for everybody else. So if you've got a question, we can walk through it live, and we can show how to do it between the two of us live. So definitely put questions or anything like that in the chat. Cool. I'm going to switch views, and then I'll just do a little jam.
All right. Hey, Circo, turn up your volume a little bit.
Is that better?
Maybe a little bit more while you're jamming. How's that, everyone? More. Let's crank it. Yeah, Circo, they're saying it's too low. Turn off your echo cancellation. I think that's what it is.
Okay. So,
While you're jamming, and then turn it back on when we start talking again.
okay, let me see if I can do that really quick.
And make sure it's direct audio there.
Let me know if that's better. Okay.
They're like
Back.
saturate the internet.
Sorry.
Cool.
All right. Back again. Hello.
Hello, hello. Yeah, I think it was the just one of those things when we have to have the echo cancellation on, like when you're gonna jam, just turn it off.
How's it sounding right now with you for the echo cancellation? Do you have an echo on yours?
No.
Oh, because mine's off right now.
Oh, okay.
That's a little weird. Okay, cool. Well, I'll leave it off. See how
Yeah.
that goes.
StreamYard.
So anyway, yeah, StreamYard. So the whole idea was anything that was other than the drums. So any of those synth sounds We're all coming from the Syntakt, and I will actually cruise back over there really quick just to show you.
Okay. Yeah, give
All
a
right.
mic check since you're switching mics.
Yeah, check how's this one sound? Can you hear it?
Your whole feed is quieter now, they said, after you turn the echo cancellation off.
Okay.
Just bump it up.
I'll turn it back on.
Your voice too. Just go ahead.
Let's see here. We don't want to blast everyone out, but how's that sound? Better?
I think it's better. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll
Cool.
let you know.
Yeah. Let me know.
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea is that channels 1 through 8 on the OXI, so 1 from the bottom to 8 at the top, are controlling tracks 1 through 8 on the Syntakt. So I'm sequencing the Syntakt from the OXI. So the Syntakt has just a bunch of different sounds, and that's what we're going to go over with you in just a little bit about how to make the sounds. But the idea was that everything here was all blank at the start, and I was using different things like just randomly pressing notes, using the Euclidean sequencer,
One
using...
second. Sorry to
Sorry.
bring your voice up, I guess, a little bit more.
Okay. Let's see. Does that help? Is that louder?
Yeah, I think it's loud, but just, yeah.
Okay.
Just, yeah.
So just generating random stuff on the OXI using the Euclidean sequencer and also using the random generator. So you can generate random notes or you can use the Euclidean sequencer to generate them in a Euclidean pattern. And that's sending those out to the Syntakt. The way the OXI sends those out is it sends out on whatever the root note is, whatever the gate is. So it sends it as one single note. And then you have the choice to go in and adjust those notes. So you can either hold down a note and then turn the knob here, the second knob in, and that moves the note within the key that you have set. Or the randomize function where you would normally generate random notes as well, or sorry, random gates as well. If you turn that all the way down to the left past 0, it says pitch in the screen. And what that does is allows you to just generate random pitch on the pattern that you already have. So if you have a pattern you like, but you want to generate some random pitches, you can do that. So I was doing that on this line right here, which I'll just do that one. So that's all on this line right here. But if I hit this again, it'll generate new random pitches in that same pattern. But they're all still staying in my key that I have this set on. If I do it again. And if you didn't like the one before, you can go back and go back and use that one. I have a question
for you.
Sure.
So when you're setting up your OXI on the channel, you have to do you have to choose which octave do you want to? Can you? I don't know how I'm explaining.
So I think I know what you're asking. You can choose
offset,
it either.
Sorry, I couldn't say the word offset. Yes.
Yes. There is an offset.
Okay.
There is an offset by channel, which is super handy. Like right now we're sequencing the Syntakt, but when you're sequencing a modular, like the modules up here, one of the ways that I get around tuning all my oscillators all the time is I turn the tune all the way down to 0, and then I tune using the offset in the OXI. So if ever I bump the button, I know that by going back to 0, I'm tuned again. So it's like this cool trick that you can use the OXI for with modulars, so you don't have to constantly tune your oscillators. But within here, you can choose whichever root you want by octave, and then you can also adjust within the Syntakt that whatever the note is or whatever octave it is by the tune. So you've got a couple different ways to do that. And like the easiest way is on here, just to set it to a different octave if you want to.
So what octave do you have yours?
So
for example, like
yeah, so
C1
basically
or C2 or
yeah, so it's set in Phrygian E. I don't know why, but I like that scale for some reason, so I use it all the time. And so what this basically has is I have all of the 1 through 6 are all on E3 because that's kind of the root of that of where I have it here. And then 7 and 8, I put on E4 just so I know they're always higher pitched. So if I'm playing along live and I want something in a higher frequency band, I can use one of those two, and I know it's going to always come out in something that's a bit higher. So like this line up here on 7 that we were using before. So you can see it's much higher than the other ones, and that's just because I had it set to a higher root note and started from a higher place. But you can set each one of these lanes to be a different note if you want to, and have them be, all within the same key, but starting in a different place if you'd like to do that. So I was doing this at one point where I was going from low to high. So I had the lowest note, the lowest frequency notes on 1 and the highest frequency notes on 8. So while I'm playing live, I know kind of what frequency band I'm putting stuff in, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions?
Let me check in the chat. Anybody have any? Oh, let me come back to you.
Okay, go back.
Nope. So far, everything is good. Audio sounds good. Yeah.
Cool.
So what about, okay, so now that you've talked about how you set up the OXI, right? You choosing the root, like choosing the octave. So you tend to go in the higher, because that was one thing when I was setting it up, because I wanted to get it set up prior to our stream. I wasn't sure. Do I need to set an offset, or was it that I, choose a different octave as the starting point?
Right.
Toft has a question about copy paste functions, which I just discovered how to do that yesterday. Do you want to?
Toff, copy pastèque. That's your French.
Yeah.
That's your French autocorrect. Pastèque in French is watermelon. So that is copy watermelon is what he's asking about. So yeah, so you can copy paste. You can copy paste individual notes on the OXI, which is really cool. So if you like something in one place, you can copy patterns from one place to another, and then you can also in the Syntakt you can copy one track to another. So if you like a sound, you can move it to another sound. So all of that using like the regular copy paste functions within there.
So Toft, what were you asking about? Were you asking about specifically copy pasting on the OXI, like meaning like the pattern, or were you referring to the Syntakt? Which one are you asking about? And
not sure. Well, and just to kind of go back while we get his answer on that, just to kind of go back to what we were talking about. So as far as setting up the OXI, one of the things is when you set a key and then you go into the multi-mode, the default of that multi-mode is to have the 8 notes, like each lane is a different note in that scale. So like, let's say you have it in C, that one, if you hold down your sequencer 4 and actually you don't have to hold sequencer 4, just hold down that note and you'll see in the screen, it'll say C.
Okay. Mine says like E5. It happens to be E5 right there.
Okay. So which key are you in?
Okay, wait. Sequencer? So for this one, I put it to Phrygian E3.
Okay. So that first one at the bottom should be E, right?
Right. Yeah.
But then when you go to the next one, it'll be F.
Hang on. On mine, they're all E5.
Are they? Oh, well, then you already set it up that way. If you go to a new sequencer like that, it sets them as 8 notes in that scale.
And I got you. It did do that.
Yeah. So the top one's E, the bottom one's E, and then it's the notes in the scale in between. So I always, when I'm setting it up, I set them all to be the root note, right? So the E, I usually do E3 if that's what my root note is, on 1 through 6, and then 7 and 8 I'll do E4 just so I have some higher frequency ones. And again, something that's really important for everybody in the chat, everybody that's watching. The whole point of doing these things is because we want to give you examples of the way we do stuff because it works for us. And if it doesn't work for you, that's cool, but maybe it'll give you a good idea. We're not saying this is how you have to do it.
To E3? Is that what you're saying? Like,
yeah. So actually, a little trick before you get into that.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So you have to hold the sequencer down as you're doing that. Yeah, so
Got it.
you're on
I know what
sequencer
you're talking
4, so
about.
hold sequencer 4 in the first note, and then it'll be E. And then
Like,
if you
so hold
keep
the button, right? And then hit the I see what you mean.
hold sequencer first, and then hit the button.
Okay. You know what? Because I had the offset set pretty high. I think that's why it was doing that.
Got it.
So the
Yeah,
offset,
I
I
leave the
shouldn't
offset
even
at
have
0 unless I'm sequencing a modular.
like at the actual root node of where you're referring to when you
Hmm.
mean when you say 0, that's what you really mean, right?
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
if
So
you're starting
there's
at E,
no offset from the original note.
got it. Okay. So that was my first mistake right here. So let me do that. So I'm on the same page as you. Okay, so continue.
Yeah, so that way, once you've got all those set without any notes on them, but you've kind of set that as your root note for each one of those sequencers, then when you generate stuff on that sequencer, it will generate in that note without any differences until you change pitch. And so it's good because you'll bring in something that's rhythmic, that's a pattern, but it won't, and it'll be in key, but it won't have any kind of melodic content. So if you want to go in and just hold down one trigger and adjust it, you can adjust that one note. Or if you want to use that randomize function to randomize the pitch, you can do it that way, however you choose.
Got it.
Sometimes you want control, so you just want to change one thing, and another time you might want to do you might want to have it be a melodic thing and have it, generate a whole melody.
Cool. All right, I'm going to answer Top's question really quick while I'm just here. So
Cool.
he's like, "Can you show on the Oxy?" So if I wanted to copy, I'm going to turn this off. So if I wanted to copy this note, it's like I'm going to change it to different note. So it's G3.
Hmm.
So if I go, let's see, I did this yesterday. So if I say copy steps, and I could choose multiple steps,
Hmm.
and then if I hold paste and then
You can put it
touch,
wherever you want.
so now I just pasted that note in
Yeah, and
these
if
four
that note, which
spots.
note is that you copied?
G3, I don't know,
Okay,
just
so
some
if you
random.
copy the G3,
Uh-huh.
now hold paste, and you can paste it onto other sequencers too. Or, I mean, onto other lanes.
Oh, okay. So if I go like that, like the sound
Yep.
effects.
Now hold those. I love the sound effects.
Yeah. I feel like it reinforces what I'm trying to do here.
It
But
totally does.
yeah, no, yeah, this is great. So
And
how
so
do
now
you
you've got
copy a whole
those are all
pattern?
G's as well. So it's like, okay, cool. Well, if I want that note to be in some different places, cool. I can just copy it and paste it around.
So how do you copy a pattern? Have you copied a pattern, like a whole pattern before, or just notes?
Um,
If
I
you haven't, it's cool. I
I
haven't yet.
haven't on that. My guess would be is that you would hold down the
Let me
sequencer and then the
shift.
lane because that's generally how you do all that stuff.
Oh, I just did it. Well, it said duplicate pattern. Let me just.
Duplicate makes it twice as long.
That's right. Okay,
So
wait.
instead of being 16 steps, it'll be 32 steps.
Got you. Okay. Awesome. Okay.
Cool.
There's another question in the chat. I'm not sure if you've done this, but I'll pop it up. Yeah, let's see. I would like to see chord transposition using an external MIDI controller.
That
Personally,
I
I have
will be
not tried
honest, I
that.
have not done for two reasons. One, anybody who watches my channel will laugh at this. I don't use many polyphonic synthesizers. I don't really use chords. I tend to use a lot of mono voices to make the notes that would be in a chord rather than having the same voice playing multiple notes to make a chord because I find that more interesting in music. So I do it like that in my stuff. So I don't really use polyphonic synthesizers in my performances. The second part of that is that I also don't use an external MIDI controller to control the OXI. You can, it
Yeah.
has MIDI in, but I just haven't done it because I haven't found any need for it in what I do.
Same here. Same
Yeah,
here.
I mean, you can do it,
Mhm.
but it's not something that I've done. So unfortunately, when we're planning on doing, we'll do a little spoiler here. We're planning on doing a live
Mm,
stream with Manuel, who's the guy who designed the OXI one and
mhm.
who does all the firmware and does all the updates. And he is an absolute genius when it comes to software. We're going to do a live stream with him probably next weekend if everything works out, or maybe even after Christmas. Just keep an eye on the channels for that. But
Mhm.
he's going to walk us through functions like that because there's a lot of stuff that Trovarsi and I don't use this for. And so we just want to make sure that, we can help you with what we know. And
And
then
then you
if
get
somebody
your
else,
questions answered. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, like, he'll and then he will also have him, walk through all the new firmware update,
right.
like, the new stuff on the new firmware, which will be cool, and have a Q&A for that too.
Yeah, for sure. And so, like, the idea with this live stream is we wanted to talk about using using randomization in a creative way. So, what we were talking about before is how you can randomize on the OXI, and I'll just walk through that really quick. I'll step back over there so you can
Yeah,
see that, and then we'll come back to this and we're going to work on randomizing sounds for sound design using the Syntakt. So it'll be kind of cool for both.
cool. Me
So change here. Get used to this multi-view thing.
I know, right?
Okay, so we're just going to use a different lane because I've already got some stuff in these lanes. But so if you hold down the sequencer, right now I'm on sequencer 4. So if I hold down that and let's go to 3, lane 3, you'll see the orange dots that shows you that that's the lane you're doing stuff on. And then if you hold shift and this thing that has the little dice on it, that's the roll the dice randomization function. And so when you go into this, you have it's set up as a Euclidean sequencer. So the first thing adjusts the length. So like right now, it's
Not to interrupt you, I'm sorry. Just
no
out
worries.
of if you can punch in,
I
do it. If
can't,
you can't, don't worry
unfortunately.
about it. It's
Yeah,
fine.
and we can maybe do this because you have a better camera on your overhead when we go back to doing this.
Okay.
But right now it's set up to 16 steps, and as you dial in the number of pulses in the Euclidean sequence, right now it has 1, so it shows up on 1. When you do 2, it'll be on 1 and 9 because it separates them out by 8. 3 divides them up like that. So as you're adding steps, you can come up with some interesting sounding patterns in there. So like if I was, I'll just do this with a kick so you can hear that. So that one is 8 steps. So it's a step every other on 16. But if you divide it by 7, you can't divide 7 into 16 evenly. So it gives you a kind of a cool off rhythm. And then if you go, let's say to 9, but you'll notice that they're all one note. Because when you generate something randomly with the Euclidean sequencer on this, it generates it in that whatever's the root note of the lane. Then if you shift and you hit the dice one another time, this would normally be a random generator that generates gate and pitch. But if you turn the knob all the way down past 0, it's just pitch. And then every time you press, it will generate a random pitch in key on those notes. So now if I press this, so it's generating in Phrygian E a random melody on that on those gates that I already put in using the Euclidean sequencer. Now, if I go back to the Euclidean sequencer and I change the number of pulses, the pitch will stay on every note, but it'll move around. So again, it's random. So let's move that back to 7.
That's really cool. I didn't know that the pitch would stay. I thought that pitches would just be locked to those specific steps. And if
Right.
I turn the Euclidean sequencing so it would change the location of where the gate was, that it would play that pitch. So that's really cool. I
Right.
didn't
So
know that.
and it's a huge difference between the Euclidean sequencer in the OXI and the new Euclidean sequencer in the Analog Rhythm Mark II. The analog rhythm, the pitch stays with the gate. So when you move it, the pitch moves. In the OXI, when you generate those random pitches, you're generating a random pitch on all 16 steps that's in key, but they only play when there's a gate there.
Okay, that's
So
what I was saying. So it
yeah, and
does
so
do that.
you move the gate, you're getting to a different pitch. And with the one in the rhythm, when you move the gate, you move the pitch with it. So they both act really differently, which is super cool because you can use them in different creative ways.
That is cool.
So with this one, you see like, so that was one way to generate that, to generate a pattern. But if I was to, so now I deleted that out, so I don't have anything on that lane anymore. And if I go back into the randomization thing and I push twice, you get to the random generator. And if I don't do just pitch, right? If I move that, it becomes density. So it's like 0 to 100%. So if I go to say, let's say 60%, and randomization on, I don't know, 20%, because I don't want it super random, and a range of 5, I don't know, and bias I always leave at 0. Then when you hit this first one, instead of generating just pitch, you'll notice that it will populate this line with pitch and notes. So now there's notes on 60% of the steps because I made the randomization density 60. If I move that down to, let's say, I don't know, 30, and I press it again, you see it does far less gates. And each one of those gates has a random pitch, and the gate has been put in a random place. So now if I play this one, and if I generate it again, and if I boost this up a little more so we have some more notes.
And you keep it within the octave range. What is your range again?
Yeah, so you can keep it within a range of notes, right? So it can go up to 24, so it's up to two octaves completely. I usually keep it pretty low because I don't like kind of like wild swings of melodics. So I like to try and keep it within a certain thing. Like let's say I bring it all the way down to 2, you'll hear the difference here.
So it's by note. Okay.
Yeah, then if you bring it way up, you'll get, you hear how it's like all over the place.
Although that sounds pretty groovy.
It does. And again, it's totally a creative choice. And that's really the point of this whole video is how do you use randomization creatively? So if you want notes that bounce all over the place like that, make the range high. And if you want it, like for example, for me, if I was doing a bass line and I wanted to generate it randomly, I would keep the range super low because I want that bass line to kind of go within a couple notes, but not like fly all over the place. But if I'm doing it on a melody, I might do it like that and have it be, on all the way up on 24, and then it does. Right. And that's if I was doing a melody, but then if I bring it back down to, let's say, I don't know, 4, and it gives you more of, it stays kind of more within a range. So it's a bit more groovy, like for a drum groove. So that's that generation, sorry, of gate. So like on off and of pitch. But again, if let's say you arrive on a pattern, let's find one, right? Okay, let's say we really love that pattern and we say, okay, that's cool. Now you can turn that density knob all the way down past 0 and it's just pitch again, and it will keep the gate, and then we hit pitch. And then we can do it again. We can make it go up to 24 and make it go all over the place. So what's really cool about it is that you can randomly generate note, like on off gate, and you can randomly generate pitch, and you can do them separately from one another as well. It doesn't have to only be together or have to only be separate. You have a lot of creative choices in that.
So what do you have your randomization set at right now? Like what percentage? I'm just curious.
Like 20%, because I don't like it to be like super crazy random. Like, and what the randomization does is it decides, do you, like if you had it at 100%, every single note would be a different note, and there would be no kind of pattern to it really other than the key that you're in. If you keep the randomization lower, it'll play the same note more often than it plays a different note, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes.
So that way I like to keep the randomization low and keep the range low of like the note range when I'm doing basses, and then make it go higher when I'm doing things that are more melodic. And
Okay.
what's cool is you can go, so like if we went through right now and just did, let's do
Do
a
you know what the
random.
bias is? Have you
I
looked at
always keep the bias at 0, and I don't know what it is. That's why I keep it at 0, because I don't
Okay.
want to mess up something. It's
I know, I
probably
don't know what
something super important that I don't know how to use, but whatever. That's here. Let's see. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to go through and I'm going to generate, without listening to it, I'm going to generate a random pattern with random notes on every lane. But I'm going to keep them muted, and then I can go through and I can unmute and use that as a way to create something creative, right? So
Mhm.
let's mute everything. So now if we play, we've just got our make it sound cool, right? Actually, I'll just keep it a straight kick. Now, if I go through and let's just pick two random ones to unmute. It doesn't really matter. So pick two numbers
Thought
between
said
1 and
bias
8.
changes the scale.
What's that?
He said it changes the scale, just so you know,
Oh, okay,
bias.
perfect. Well, there you go. I don't want to change the scale.
Yeah,
I want to
yeah.
stay in the same scale. So pick two numbers between 1 and 8, and I'm going to unmute those, and let's see what our song sounds like. You have two numbers for me?
Oh, me.
Yeah.
Okay. Do 6 and
6 and,
and 8.
all right, 6 and 8.
Mhm.
Let's see. 6 is. And again, we can adjust things like our volumes over here. So that's one set of patterns. And then if we just take two others, let's do, I don't know, 2 and 4. So you see, because they're
Mhm.
in key, because we've got some sounds here that kind of go well together, and we can generate in different ways. We can get certain random rhythms that play off of each other. And as we were talking about a little bit before the stream, sometimes it sounds awful, but sometimes it sounds really cool. And so it's just getting used to using this when it makes sense. So if you want to generate something random, and not using it if it doesn't make sense. You know, there's plenty of times when I go in and actually write in a pattern because I have an idea. I want to hear, something on the upbeat, for example, and I'll just put those notes in. And then I can
Gotcha.
randomly generate pitch only. And then there's other times where I'm like, I don't know, let's see what the machines do, and have it just generate something, a complete thing for it.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah. So I'm going to switch back over here.
Okay. Let me just.
Cool.
Yeah, no, this is great. And there's some comments in the chat getting a
Cool.
little help about what the bias is. I'll pop it up in case people didn't catch it. But let's see, step interval offset around which the new notes are created. I don't know. I'm gonna have to mess with it
Yeah.
right now
Or
online.
not. Like we were saying
Yeah, yeah.
before, like some of this
I
some
like
of
the
this is just
system.
like use it how you want to use it. Like there's 6 different types of sequencers in the OXI one. I
Mhm.
generally stick to the multis because I'm sequencing a lot of things, and I like that kind of one line is a lane, is a voice. Just
Mhm.
because I'm used to that from the Elektron boxes and from like old school drum machines like 909s and stuff like that. So I prefer that. But if you want to use, that's what Manuel's going to show us on the other thing. If you want to use one of the super cool generative things that he's created, amazing. You totally do that.
Yeah, I've messed
Whatever
a
works
little bit with
best.
that matrical. I think I'm saying that
Yeah,
right.
the
That sequence
matricial.
matricial. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like it's almost like that snake sequencer. When I first saw it, it sort of reminded me of like the what's that sequencer
I
by
know the one you're talking about.
Renee 2, I think, or something like
Yeah,
that.
the
By
one that looks like the old
Noise.
Centipede game from when we were
Yeah,
kids.
yeah, yeah.
I
So
know
it kind of has
exactly the one
that.
you're talking about. Yeah, the I had a called the squid sequencer, the Torai
Mm,
squid,
mhm,
and that
mhm.
has that same thing. It has that kind of snake mode, and yeah, it's cool. And
And it'll
any way
skip
to generate
steps
cool new
and
stuff, I
stuff.
think is amazing.
Yeah. So right, so let's get into the Syntakt. Like, what
Yeah.
is your maybe demonstrate some ways of how you use like how you create a sound. So this is like your sound design approach more so than your live approach, right? Because you wouldn't just
Yeah.
randomize live, would you? And then it sounds
N-
crazy.
Not usually. Not usually. Let's switch
Right.
back over.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Let
Yeah.
me
So the thing is, I don't normally do the randomization of the sounds live, although you can. I mean, it kind of depends on which sound engine you're in. So like here, I'm gonna go
yeah,
back.
the hat like in the hi-hats when I was messing with it a little bit, it didn't sound as drastically crazy but then like
Right.
some of the other engines, I was like, whoa, I would not do that live.
Yeah, exactly. And like with hi-hats, you kind of want them to be a bit random and all over the place, so you get that cool kind of groove in them. And
Yeah.
with other sounds, you don't necessarily want them to be that way. So yeah,
Yeah.
it can be interesting that way. So I'm just gonna go. I have one sequence unmuted here. It's this one that's on track 2.
Okay,
It's
so that is in line with your track 2 on your
So
synth.
track 2 on my OXI is, as you can see it flashing over here, it's track 2 on the Syntakt. So if I go into track 2 here, one of the cool things with the Elektron boxes is that if you hold down one of these page buttons, whichever page it is, and you hit yes, it will randomize all 8 parameters on that page. So if you go to the synth page, so it's basically your parameters for whatever synth engine you're on, and you hit yes, it's going to randomize all those and create a new patch, basically create a new sound. Sometimes they sound good, sometimes they don't sound so good. So it's a great idea generator, not necessarily the greatest thing to play, in front of a crowd, but you never know. Like if you want to live on the edge, go for it. So now let's hear what this one sounds like. Okay, and if I hold this down and I hit yes again, I hit it again.
What engine are you on? I'm just again, sorry.
This is the tone. Tone engine.
Got it. Okay.
And yeah, so let's do it again. That one's kind of cool, but I don't like necessarily the notes that are on it. So again, I'm going to go back over here, turn this down just to pitch, and then let's generate some random notes in key. Oh, I'm not on the right one. That's why. You have to be on the right lane in order to generate those notes. So each time you hit it, you're going to get a new combination. Then you can again generate another random synth.
SURCO, just to clarify that, so are you using the OXI to mute tracks on the rhythm?
Using the OXI one more time, sorry.
So just to explain what tracks you're muting, because there was a question: are you using the OXI to mute tracks in the rhythm? I don't think
In the
you were
rhythm, no.
in the synth.
Yeah, the rhythm, everything I do is inside the box. So I'm sequencing in the rhythm, I'm adjusting sounds in the rhythm, I'm parameter locking in the rhythm, and it's not being sequenced by anything else. The Syntakt I'm using as a sound engine. So basically, it doesn't matter if the tracks are muted, because you're only muting, when you mute them, you're only muting the pattern. And right now, like if I was to hit record, you can see there's no pattern on any of these tracks. So there's no sequence in here to mute. So I'm muting any of those sequences over here. So if you hold down mute, you can see that track 2 has a blue square. That means it's unmuted, and I can go through and unmute other ones like that, and then they show up. So I'm muting what I'm sending, the sequence that I'm sending to the Syntakt. So it's not receiving any of these notes.
Cool.
Yep. So again, So you can see each time you hit it, you get a totally different sound. Now that's from one engine. So you can go in here and change to a different engine, like this Swarm one, which is kind of crazy.
Hmm.
It's kind of like super saw sounding.
Yeah.
And again, generate. And then you can go in and fine tune it.
And you can just save that sound if you want to
Yeah,
recall it
and if you
later.
like it, you can save that as something that you can use later. You know, like if you just hit function and save everything, then you can go, yeah. So it's just going to save that project. So now that sound is saved to track 2. But if you want, you can just save it as a sound and then come back to it later, and you go in and name it and do all that stuff. But so this gives us kind of a baseline sounding thing. And once again, the random generation gives you a cool place to start from. And then you can go in and start dialing it in and change, you know, do you want to add some effects? Do you want to add some reverb? Do we want to delay it? And again, this is just a single sound, but then if you added like a kick and a half in,
Nice.
right? So you can get different stuff randomly generated, and ideas started really quick this way.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I use, again, switch back over, changing places again. Sorry. So yeah, so I use the randomization in the Syntakt a lot for sound design, for coming up with new stuff. So right, so coming up with cool sounds. And the way I perform live is exactly the way we have it set up right here. So I don't sequence in the OXI live, in the Syntakt live anymore. I sequence it from the OXI. And the reason for that is because the OXI, you can randomly generate pitch in key. And in the Syntakt, you can't do that. The only way that you can do the key in any of the digiboxes is by doing the keyboard fold, and then you have to play it in. And so you can't randomly generate. And so the OXI is really powerful that way. The Syntakt is really powerful from a sound design standpoint because you can, like, it's a 12 voice mono synth in one little box. So you've got 12
Right.
different synthesizers in one box. And so the ability to carry that with you when you travel is amazing. It's like, how many voices or how much space would it take for you to do a modular case with 12 complete voices? Right? It would be just
Right.
like
Yeah.
this
No.
massive thing. And now that's all just inside the Syntakt. So for travel, for performing live, it's pretty cool. And with this
One.
random generation, it just makes it super fun.
Yeah. No. And when I was setting this up for today, and I was
Hmm.
kind of messing around with it, I hit record, like armed the Syntakt, like not just armed it, but record live.
Hmm.
And so it recorded in all the patterns onto the Syntakt. So
Yeah.
that could be like another way too. You can then go back and add parameter locks on those steps, or you could do it even from the sequence from the OXI, really, because I was doing that too. But it was kind of cool that if you wanted to save those patterns, like with that pattern on the Syntakt, say
Yeah,
pattern 10
and
times.
and
But
it's really
yeah,
super cool because
yeah,
with the Oxy, when you're generating those random patterns, it's generating the CV, it's generating the pitch, and you can send that to the Syntakt, right? So then
yeah,
you can do that. So with that
yeah.
video
That's what
that
I
I
was saying.
did,
So like you can lock like a reverb or delay on a specific step.
exactly. And that's the
Yeah.
drawback to the Oxy is that you can't parameter lock without doing CC messages and setting it all up in advance. You can't parameter lock synth parameters to individual steps. So within the Syntakt. But if you transfer the pattern over, then all of a sudden you can lock all those things to each one of the steps. If you saw the video that I did a couple weekends ago about the new update for the analog rhythm, that's one of the cool things is that if you generate patterns in the Euclidean mode, you
Mhm.
can transfer them over to the regular synth, or sorry, the regular sequencer. And then you can do
Oh
all of
yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff there as well. And then you can regenerate a new one and send it to a different sequencer. So it's a cool thing that one does kind of within the box. And this is a way to do it between the two machines.
Hey, can you try something?
Sure.
So I'm sure, I mean, I would think because you can do trigless
Mhm.
parameter locks on the Syntakt. So add a few trigless, like turn up the delay on one of the
Okay,
on
so I
one of and
tried
see.
this.
Did you try
And
it already?
yeah, but let me show you what it does.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool.
So it actually, it's kind of like a generic way to do the effect scenes, like what you have in the Octatrack, right? So
Mhm.
let's just, I'm going to reduce this down to just a couple notes so it's not too clustery. Right, so I'm on track 2
Mhm.
right now. So if I go into the record mode and I hold down function and any trigger, the reason why it's yellow is because that's a trigless trig. So there's no
Right.
note triggered there, but I can parameter lock to it. So if I hold that down and I go to,
Do like a delay or something really obvious so people can.
and I can even change the pitch. Okay, so what this does is now it acts like a scene in the Octatrack. So right now, you notice it doesn't do anything when it goes by it because it's not using this sequencer. But if I press it, it'll do all those parameter locks. Watch this. And then if I release it, it goes right back to the old one.
Oh, you mean like you on that specific step?
Yeah, but it doesn't just change that. Actually, I'll stay here. It doesn't just change that step. That's the thing. Because there's not a sequencer for it to be playing within there, it thinks there's nothing playing. So that trigless trig doesn't do anything.
But wait,
But
is it on the same step as your? I don't think it's on the same step as your sequence. You were looking at sequence number 2, right? So what is that? 1, I can't see because
yeah,
it's too
so
small.
I'm on number 2.
Right. So like look at the steps on the OXI and
Mm-hmm.
put it on the same step as
No, but that's what I'm saying. You can't put it on a step here. I could put that anywhere that I want to.
well,
So
just
here, I'll go
humor
back
me
in.
and put it on the same step. Like,
Okay, but it doesn't do anything. That's what I'm saying. You won't hear anything.
okay.
The
Just
only
humor me
time
anyway.
this does anything is if you press it down
Right.
and then it does it. So like right now, so it's not doing anything on
Yeah,
any
but humor
step
me and put it on the same step. Put the trigless trig on the same step that OXI is.
on, okay, so the Oxy, it's on step 7. Oops. See, it
Yeah.
still doesn't do anything,
All right. Thank you for
but
humoring me. I needed to see that
here's
you
the
know,
difference.
concept.
Let's hold this one down. Right, actually, let's just delete this one for now and put a new one in. Right, so now there's a new parameter lock there, but it doesn't have anything locked to it. So now if I hold this down and I go in and I change, let's say the overdrive in this. And I'll pan it or whatever. So all of that's now locked to 7. The stuff we did before is, and 7 is not a step, it's a scene like what you would have in the Octatrack. So now if I hold down 11, that's the
We have
first
different
group.
scenes now instead.
Yeah.
You can
So
even have
now
scenes.
11 acts like it has those first parameter locks for as long as I hold it down and then I let it go. And now 7 has the other set of parameter locks. And then if I release it, it goes back to the original.
That's pretty cool. So it's like
Yeah,
another
so it's
form of improv like performance.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was really funny because the way I came up with that was trying to do exactly what you asked me to do. I was like, hey, I can do a trigless trig and then it's going to do those things and I can lock without having the sequencer. And
Yeah.
it didn't. And I was like, oh man, but I have stuff locked to it. And then every time I would push it down, I was like, wait a minute, this is a scene. I could make that one thing be a high pass filter. I could make that one thing be just a delay. And anytime
Mm,
I press that, it delays that whole sound.
that's
So
cool. Hmm.
yeah, it was totally by accident. Now the problem is you have to be in record mode for that to work. And if you just touch the thing, you delete it. So it's not
Oh,
really set up to do it this way. It was just some like random hack thing that I happened across.
right, right, right.
But but yeah, I mean it's like you said, it's another super fun way to do improvisation stuff.
Very cool. Let me check in with the chat. I've
Yeah.
had some comments, been popping them up. Does anybody have any questions? We're kind of approaching the top of the hour, so just want to check in with everyone. And also, thanks for being here. This is,
Yeah, thank you guys. It's
yeah,
fun to do it this way.
yeah, it makes it a little more so we can talk and answer questions and
Yeah.
just bounce ideas. Which, yeah, this is great.
Brian posted great timing. I'm just setting up my Oxy now.
Yep, yep, yep. I popped it
That's
up.
good.
Yep.
That's awesome. Very
Yeah,
cool.
no, it's a very powerful sequencer for sure. I definitely don't know all the things that it can do because I feel like as I use it a little bit more, it just keeps, I learn, every time you use something, you learn a little bit more, goes a little bit deeper. And it's a very deep sequencer. So it can
It
be
is.
as simple or as complex as you want it to be, which I like.
Exactly. And the
Room for
same
growth.
right, and the same with the Electron boxes. Like they're super deep synthesizers as well as sequencers.
Mm.
So like you have all these options. And the thing I love about this is that like when I went out to Seattle a couple months ago and I played the show with Matthew out there, we were talking about how similar our two setups are as far as the gear we use, but
Mhm.
how completely different the sound is that we're getting out of them. And that's what's so cool is we've all got this gear that's kind of the same, but we're all using it in our own creative combinations of ways.
Mhm.
And that's like with these improvisational things, these randomization things, some people may not want to use that, or some people may want to use it for production or only for generating rhythms. But everybody has the ability to use them however you want to.
Yes. Hey, Synth Dad. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
He has a question.
Cool. Do you apply LFOs or mod lanes to the randomization parameters to vary them over time, or
I
is that too
tried
much
it
random?
last night. It's kind of crazy.
It depends. I don't
Yeah.
generally do it from the Oxy. So you can generate LFOs, you can generate all kinds of cool stuff from the Oxy. I don't usually use those mod lanes at all in the Oxy, but I do
Hmm.
use them inside the sequencer. So like a quick step back. The
Wait,
way
what do
I
you mean inside the sequencer? Or do you mean
yeah,
inside the Syntakt or inside?
inside the Syntakt, yeah, not inside the
Yeah. Okay.
synthesizer, not the
Yeah. Yeah.
sequencer, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a step back. The way I set up for a live show, because my shows are improvised completely, I want to have sounds, but not patterns and songs and things all set up. But I want to
Mhm.
do that sound design in advance. So I'll go through these, the things we've been talking about today, like how to generate random sounds in the Syntakt. And I'll be like, oh, that's a cool one. I'm going to save that one. Okay, now I'm going to do another one. Now I'm going to save that one. Within those, you saw that I generated the random and then I went through and started tweaking it, right? So I started with like, okay, now I'm going to add filter. Now I'm going to shorten this one up. I'm going to, the envelope's a little too long or whatever. And I'll
Mhm.
dial the sound in. That's where I'll add LFOs and things like that. So I might have an LFO
Mhm.
moving the filter cutoff to make that sound more interesting, but there's not a pattern yet. So I'm just coming up with the sound that will be like a useful tool when I'm playing live. So I can generate the random stuff in the Oxy with sounds that I know sound cool and that will sound good together.
Got you. So just like so kind of circling back and just reiterating some things. So talk about so when you're setting up the Oxy now, so you have
Mhm.
it in the multi on the sequencer, multi, one channel assigned per MIDI track to the syntax. So
Mhm.
one for one, two for two, and so forth. Then do you have any other advice, like, because you have the 12 voices really, or
Mhm.
12 synths really, right? So any recommendations? Like, do you say like, okay, for the first four, you want to have like bases, and maybe the next four you do something else, and the next four you do something else. Like, what other structural tips can you give
Mhm.
to have basically to set up this improvisational setup to win and have fun, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, what are
exactly.
the yeah,
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
what other
as we both know, we've talked about this a bunch offline. It's really important to have your gear set up in a way that it's usable live because
Mhm,
it's stressful and you're in a room and it's loud and it's dark and you need to have it set up in a way where you know where everything is. And
mhm,
again, there's not a right or wrong way to do that. Like if you're creating whole songs and patterns in advance, you're going to set it up differently than somebody who's improvising 100%. And if you're
right,
doing
right,
somewhere in the middle where you've got patterns, but you've got room for improvisation, you're going to set that up differently than either of the others. So it
mhm.
really comes down to what you like. So I'll just show really quick. Switch back over again
Yeah,
here.
yeah. So, like, how is it
Yeah.
yeah.
So in a couple things, I'll start with the rhythm because that's the one that has the most structure. So for me, track one is always the kick. It's always kind of my basic the kick by itself. Five and six are always different rumbles for the kick, so I can put those together. So let me mute this so I can just play just the rhythm. So one is always a kick, and if I go through and I change patterns, to a different pattern, that was a little loud. But if I change to a different pattern, one will always be the kick. If I go
Got
to a
it.
different kit, because the rhythm has different kits within it, one is always a kick. So if I change in the middle of a song, I know I'm going to at least have a kick on that spot and not like some random, like, I don't know, synth
Right.
stab or whatever.
Right,
So
right.
kick, these are both rumbles always. So again, different versions. So you've got like a backing rumble. This one's a little bit more tonal. Two is always a snare or a clap. But on every kit, it's a different snare or clap and a different kick. Then up here, I use always cymbals. So I've always got closed hat here, open hat, and another open hat. And then on this end, I'll put something that's like the closed hat pattern, so a 16th note, but that's not a cymbal. So like on this one, it's like, actually, I don't have anything in there right now.
So while you're jumping to different pattern, I'm gonna just, reiterate the whole structure of the rhythm. So the reason why he does the closed, open, open, closed is if you for those who have a rhythm, you'll know that those the first top two choke each other
Yeah.
out, and then the next top two to the right choke
Yeah. So
you on
nine
the
and 10 choke,
thank
11
you, I
and
can't see
12
the
choke,
numbers
7
too.
and 8, and 3 and 4. They all choke each other. So that's four voices with 8 tracks. And then
Right,
these four, 1, 2, 5, and 6, are individual voices. They're not part of any choke group.
got it.
So
Yes,
with that setup, I have 7, 8, 3, and 4. Those can be whatever. So I've got them set up as like percussive things, but that are tonal, if that makes sense. It's not melodic elements, but they're like tonal percussive. So like, so So you can hear they're just like kind of sounds that are in there. So anyway,
right.
that's my structure there. So I always know where everything is, and I can always kind of, if everything else goes haywire and a machine falls off the table or whatever, I can always come back to drums and I know where they are exactly. So that's
Right.
super important for me. With setting up the OXI and melodic elements, it's a little different depending on what I'm using. So with the Syntakt, the way this is set up with the 8 voices on these 8 lines, I usually set that up with all the digital voices in one synthesizer. And if I want to use the 4 analog ones, I'll put them
And
on a
one
separate,
sequencer, right?
yeah,
And
one
one
sequencer, sorry.
yeah, no,
And if I want to use the 4 analog voices, I'll put them on a different sequencer. So I know, because the OXI, as you know, has 1, 2, 3, 4 are different sequencers. So right now this is 4, but there's 8 lanes. 3 also has 8 lanes, but it's set up for something else. So And then what I generally do is, as I mentioned earlier, I'll have the lower numbers, so like 1 through 6, be in one octave, and then 7 and 8 be in a higher octave. So it'll still be in that same root note or that same key, but that way when I'm playing, if I need something in a higher range, I can put it there. I can also I have also in the past set this up so it basically goes from lowest frequency range to highest all the way across the 8. So then if I'm
Okay.
playing live and I want like something in the high mids, I know that's probably going to be on channel, 5 or
4 and
6.
5 or something
Yeah,
like
or
that.
4 or 5, 6 in that range.
Got it.
And so it's just a way to always kind of more or less know what you're coming back to. But I'll set up the pattern in the Syntakt as basically a drum kit, just like I would in here, except it's like a synth kit. So it's just sounds. There's no patterns there. And I know that all 12 of those sounds sound good together. So any combination that I pick from the sound design that I did earlier, any combination that I pick, I know will work together. They're not like, one's super melodic and the other one's super industrial or whatever. I'll kind of keep those together. And if I want a different group of sounds, I just open a different pattern and that'll be a new kit for me
And
within
then
here.
that kit is created to kind of all the sounds work together within that particular kit. So you
Exactly.
jump to that. Got it. That's
Yep.
pretty cool.
And so
Good
that
way to
it's just a way to keep it.
organize.
Yeah.
Do you save? So now, so there's a couple questions. So I have a
Hmm.
question in the chat also has a question. So maybe you can demonstrate this. So
Sure.
Toft asks, how can you show your favorite tricks with the Syntakt using the LFO? So my question then is not only show like if you can answer Toft's question, but
Hmm.
also is there any specific way that you can recommend? Like, how do you save your sounds? Do you go through and make sure like on the Syntakt you can choose? Do you categorize your sounds so you know you
Hmm.
can find those sounds again, or is it like you just use them on those patterns? And do you really actually go and save the sound into your library? Like, do you
Yeah.
go through all
So
that, or
Yeah, so I don't save individual sounds as sounds. You totally can. I just save them within the kit because I'm not trying to duplicate that sound into another kit. The reason why I use the Syntakt and not the Digitact as often is because I'm a synth person. I'm like making the sounds and not like, oh, hey, I have this awesome kick in a file and I'm going to use that kick every time. And I see the saving the sounds kind of the same way. I don't want to have it be the same sounds from kit to kit to kit. I do with the rhythm because I do want certain sounds to be similar, like the kicks and the cymbals. I like when they have some continuity to them. But with the synth
right?
ones, I would rather they kind of stayed well together. And then as far as using the LFO, I mean, within the Syntakt, the cool thing and this goes for a few of the other boxes too, not the rhythm, unfortunately, but this has 2 LFOs per track.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so basically in 12 tracks, you have 24 LFOs. So you have a lot that you can use them for. So depending on what the sound is, I tend to keep certain things really basic because I don't know how I'm going to use them together live. And then there's a lot of times that I'll dial in an LFO live if I'm like, oh, I like the sound of that, but I need my hand free. So I'm going to make the LFO do the thing. And that comes from like the modular thing. Like I'm sure you do the same thing. Like
Right, like with
I've
the
got
filter
like I have
opening
an
closing.
LFO here, like for a quad LFO that I don't have plugged into anything right now. Because if I'm doing something when I'm playing live, I'm just going to patch it and go, okay, yeah, let's just use that one. Now I'm going to move on to something else. And I do the same thing in the Syntakt all the time.
Yeah, that's what I do too. I use like I leave patch cables hanging off the Batumi and the Pamela's workout.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
then
I've
I
seen
can
that.
just
And I do the
patch.
same with the PAMs too, because you've got so many options for modulation. And I don't ever, because I'm not playing tracks that are supposed to sound a certain way, I don't I don't hard patch things and go, yeah, this is going to always be the LFO for this thing. And it's the exact same within the Syntakt or the modular. It's kind of exactly the same way.
Yeah,
So I'll
yeah.
use them for certain things. But like for example, within the rhythm on on my 16th hats, like on these, I'll go in on that track and I'll use the LFO on the decay time and then I'll dial that in, and then I'll set it to a random wave. And you hear it just kind of has changes all over the place with the hats. So
Mm-hmm.
you always
Mm-hmm.
talk about like how do you humanize your hats, because when you're a human drummer you never hit it exactly the same twice. That's a
Right.
great LFO trick for hats, is just put it on a random wave and put that on either the decay or the tune or the attack, or figure out which one you like the best for what you're doing, and then dial in the depth of it, so it'll give it a lot of kind of fluctuation between sounds. And that the same works in the Syntakt if you're using it for drums.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not, so I don't use that very often. But with the Syntakt, I like to use LFOs. Obviously the most basic is on a filter cutoff, so you can have a sound that moves a bit. But you can also set, because you've got so many destinations.
Like on the envelope is pretty.
Yeah, like you
Mm-hmm.
can like different
The
parameters.
amp envelope is pretty. Putting it on
Yeah.
range. Yep.
Yep, exactly. And again, it just totally depends on the sound you're looking for. There's not one like, oh, this works on every single thing. But yeah, and another little trick is you've got this mode. So it's either like the free flowing, and for people who don't do modular, this is something I think that a lot of people aren't used to seeing, is to have an LFO that's kind of free flowing or one that resets,
Mm-hmm.
so that it resets with the trigger. So if you're, and I'm not sequencing in here, so there's no trigger, so you wouldn't see that. But if you've got one that resets with the trigger, it'll act however it acts every time the trigger plays. That LFO will move through its cycle from the start of the trigger. And if it's in free flowing mode, it just kind of is moving around no matter whether or not their trigger's playing. So using the OXI to sequence, because there's no triggers, I tend to keep everything in that free mode and use it like that. I'm not using it on individual hits like you would if you were sequencing within the Syntakt.
Right. So actually, I'm glad you kind of touched on that again, because so above the trees. So just to answer your question, it was when referring to the scenes when holding the step on the rhythm as well as any of the other boxes. I would imagine it'd be the same because their sequencers are pretty much the same on the dig attack, in terms of
Oh yeah.
the trigless functions, right?
Yeah, so
So
you
like
can
on the
do
dig
that.
attack and the Oxy, you definitely can do what we were doing, what he was demonstrating on the Syntakt. You could do that on the Digitac. You could do that on the
Yep.
rhythm as well.
Yeah, all the
Yeah,
Electron
and the
boxes
digital.
all can do trigless trigs. And if you're sequencing from something other than inside that box itself, they act the same
Yeah,
no matter
that's
which one you're using. So yeah,
yeah,
I happened upon it on this, but you can use it on any of them. Yeah.
cool.
So
All
what
right.
other questions do we have in here?
That was pretty much it. I mean, let's see. Yes, you can send program changes. Yeah,
Mhm.
they're talking about program changes from the Oxy. I personally have not done that, but I know that the Oxy is capable of doing
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, and the
Um,
same thing, I don't either because that's not the way that I play. But again, every single one of these machines, use them how they work best for you. Don't necessarily try to throw the kitchen sink in every song you're doing and try to have it use every function that it can possibly do. That's usually the biggest problem with the Octatrack. Whenever anybody gets that, they want it to be a synth and a sampler and a drum machine and a live looper and whatever in every song. And it's like, it's not because it can do things that you should. And it's the same with any of these, like use them
right.
for what they're good for.
Cool. Yep.
Let's see.
So yeah, I guess we're a little over an hour. So I just want to
Cool.
check in, make sure anyone has any other questions before we wrap it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
happy to answer any questions. And if you think of something after the stream, I mean, these will be posted on both of our channels. So
mhm,
just pop into the comments and ask whatever questions you have. And
mhm.
I will say, we have like Synthad is in the comments right now. When I first got my Oxy, his tutorials were the first that I watched because they're
Me too.
super, super good at giving you how the Oxy actually works. And then I went through and I was like, okay, that is useful to me. That's useful to me. And those are the things I do now. And so I think the same applies to any of these, like learn how it's used and then figure out what works for you. And his tutorials are great. They're like my favorite ones for the for the OXI.
Yes. Yeah, I watched him too. Above the trees was making some comments about thinking about adding the octatrack, but now maybe the Syntakt. The one thing, just to reiterate, using that trigless function as just so we're clear on it, like the octatrack has defined scenes, right? You have the crossfader, you can add a bunch of different parameter settings and crossfade from one scene to the next and so forth. With the trigless condition, the way SURCO was using it, you have to turn on, like, arm the track and be conscious about when you hold that button to activate that trigless condition, that you don't lift your finger off and then lose what you did. Now, yes, you could probably reload
Yep.
as a safety, save the pattern and reload. So therefore it'll put the trigless condition back. But
The
that's
other,
definitely a workaround. It's
yeah,
not really like
totally.
a
It's not,
defined, like, scene
it's not
thing.
made
So
to
if
work
you're
that way.
yeah, it's not really made to work. So if you're like, "Hey, I wanna have defined scenes, be able to crossfade," and I mean, the Octatrack is powerful, and if you're gonna do that, I would highly recommend looking at the Octatrack deeper to see if that does exactly what it is that you wanna do. Don't lean into another machine just for the sake of using it as a scene
Yeah.
launcher, if you will.
And
Like, it's not the same. It's just a
it's
workaround, a
totally
fun
not the
workaround.
same. The
Yeah,
key is
yeah.
that thing that I just showed, that's only affecting that individual track. Where with the Octatrack, a scene is
Yeah.
affecting, you can affect any one of the four inputs, and you can use the Octatrack as a performance mixer, which is the way I
Right.
use it,
Yeah.
the way you use it, the
It's
way
just
EasyBot's template works and everything. So
it's just way more
you're
powerful,
way
like, for
more
a scene.
powerful. So
Yeah,
not
yeah.
only are you
Like it
saving it, but they're master effects, and it can use different
Mhm,
incoming tracks differently. And you have the parts. So you have four individual
mhm.
banks of 16 performance effects that affect all the tracks and all the inputs. So it's a totally different thing than what we were doing. This is
Yeah,
just kind
yeah.
of like the ghetto way to do it on one track.
Yeah, like, this is like a workaround,
Like,
like, "Hey, I'm using this synth. Cool. I
yeah,
can
and I want
have
that
a
synth to
scene
have like a
to."
cool build up thing. Okay, cool. I've
Yeah,
got a
might
button
as
that I
well
can do
use
that
it
with.
on here.
Yeah,
Exactly.
totally.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally. Something totally different. That's the thing. Each one of these boxes is they're for their own thing.
Mhm.
And the you see all the time in chats where people are saying, "Oh, they limit this so you have to buy another one." And it's like, "No, they're different things." It's not like they limit, it's not like they make a sports car without a truck bed just to make you buy a truck. It's like, no, if you need a truck, you buy a truck. And if you need a sports car, you get a sports car. And it's the same with these.
Right.
Nobody complains that the subsequent 37 doesn't sample because it's not a sampler, it's a synthesizer. And the
Right, right.
Syntakt is a synthesizer, and the Octatrack is a Swiss Army knife of everything, and the Digitact is a
Sampler.
sampler. And so, like,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
all have their own individual things that they do. And the
Yes.
OXI is a super powerful outboard sequencer that does
Mhm.
its own thing. And that's why I use it with the other ones too.
Cool. All right, then on that note, I think we can wrap it.
Awesome.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
This has been a good stream, super informative. I've even learned a couple tips with the Oxy, which is great. But yeah, good.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys
Cool.
very
Yeah,
much. And
thank
again,
you.
put comments or questions in the chat, or I mean, in the
And the
comments.
description. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that way we'll be happy to answer those back or, reach out on other socials. Happy to answer whatever.
Cool.
Thank you guys very much. Take care.
Cheers. Yeah, have a happy Sunday.
You too.